All right, guys, another Author Wisdom podcast day with Vince Warnock. I've already interviewed Vince. In the past. We talked about GPT and AGI and all of these kinds of interesting topics. Today, you might notice I'm blue. That's because my Warmly is bugging, and I don't care, so you're going to see me blue today. I also updated that Warmly, so that's for your enjoyment. Couple more of accomplishments or whatever you want to call them on my left. Vince, welcome to the pod. We're going to talk about publishing today. How's been your week? How's been everything so far?
It has been crazy, man. We are gearing up to move country, moving in exactly 3 weeks from today. And as anyone who can see the video, this can probably see, I haven't packed much things at all. So we're literally selling everything and starting afresh in new country. The only thing you're taking with me is some of my collectibles and that. So I feel very unprepared. But very excited and very nervous and very anxious and all those things at the same time.
Well, man. So where are you moving again?
Moving from New Zealand to Australia. Going to a place called Mildura, which is when you're driving from Melbourne to Adelaide, it's about 8 hours out of Melbourne, about 4 hours till you get to Adelaide. And it's the most beautiful little place. Right on the Murray River, you're surrounded by distilleries and vineyards and restaurants and cafes. And there's less than 50,000 people there. And it's just absolutely beautiful. So we are hanging out for the warmer weather and hanging out to get there.
Wow, man. And you are very near the beach in Adelaide. So is that why you moved? And did you ever pre-visited Adelaide? I guess so, before moving there.
We did pre-visit. We kind of made the decision based on the fact that New Zealand is a beautiful country. I absolutely love it here. This is my home. But it's not that good to live here at the moment, mainly because the economy's tanked. I think our groceries, I heard the other day, our groceries have gone up 20%, all our groceries in the last 6 months. And the 6 months prior to that, they went up 20%. So we're just on this upward trajectory where the cost of living is getting more and more expensive. House prices here are ludicrous. Like an average 3-bedroom small house seems to be around $1.5 million. And we're after way bigger than that. So we started looking around the world. And one of my co-founders lives for a couple of my businesses, lives in Mildura. She joked with us and said, "Oh, you guys should move out here." And we started looking at house prices there, and that seeded the thought within us. So when we went out to stay with them and go and visit, we just fell in love with the place, and it was a no-brainer for us.
Interesting. I have the 2023 Index of Economic Freedom. New Zealand is number 3 on that chart. So there was apparently a decrease in GDP. Inflation rate, I mean, we're seeing that pretty much throughout the world, the 20%-ish thing, maybe not that much. And maybe, yes, the real estate prices are bunkers, but to my understanding, you're not seeing that in Australia. Australia is still on track to be economically viable.
Yeah, and the place we're moving to as well. I mean, we compared it to the price of various groceries. So the place we're moving to is basically farm to table. You're surrounded by people that produce produce and all this kind of stuff. So we looked at the price of avocados, just as a good example. In Mildura right now, the price of avocados is about $1 each. Over here, they're $8 each. So it's a very different proposition when you get to that. And by the way, the ones that we're getting for $8 each are tiny. They're not ripe. And the ones in Mildura are just absolutely perfect. So it's things like that. That's one example, but it's things like that that really do kind of tip the balance towards Australia. But the other thing too is, we don't have a solution to it over here. And I mean, a lot of intelligent people working very hard to turn around the economy, and we're seeing little blips every now and then. But the reality is, it's still heading in the wrong direction. And most of the solutions that the government's coming up with is, well, instead of stimulating the economy, instead of stimulating growth and helping small business and entrepreneurs, let's just tax the crap out of them. And all their solutions are add new taxes and new taxes and new taxes. And it's getting to the point where it's really hard to succeed in New Zealand.
Right. So you're the second entrepreneur Kiwi that I talked to that is moving out. I've heard the tax reason as well.
A lot of them. A lot of them are. Yeah.
Canada is also that way. And I do think there's an exodus there. Quebec, my socialist Quebec, I think we're taxed like 40%, just bunkers. And this second entrepreneur meeting in 1 month, he's actually coming in Oaxaca, Mexico. Mexico is really, I'm really bullish on it from a nomad or slow mad perspective. There's a lot of this community that's coming up here. And for the avocado, well, I'm like, oh, well, not start an avocado business slash
Yeah.
cartel from Mexico, like
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
gonna start having these avocados, gonna ship them by ship. They're gonna arrive in
Yeah.
like 2 days or so, and they're still gonna be fresh. Gonna
Well,
make
the only
like
problem
it.
with that is our government is very much backward in the way that they deal with imports. So they
Okay,
have
so
this
they
weird thought
tax
that if you
also,
import,
and
yeah, they will tax the hell out of it. Like we can't even buy, and this is a very first world problem. I'm very conscious this makes me look
yeah,
like a bit of a snob, but I love really good quality shoes, men's
yep,
shoes,
mm,
and to get Italian leather shoes
yep,
is like the quality of those are incredible. But
mm,
we can't buy them over here because there's a huge tax on Italian leather
yeah.
because they want to stimulate the local leather economy. But the problem is over here, there's not an audience to build or to make really good quality leather shoes. So
Right.
you end up having to travel the world to go and get what you want, which is
Another
annoying.
opportunity, you import a little Italian and you tell him to make some shoes with some NZ cows. I only see opportunities.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've heard about that problem in other parts of the world as well.
Yep.
It's not only in NZ, but governments and regulations. Today I was talking with another podcast guest, a UX guy that worked in the travel industry, and I told him, how do you fix the crappy airline industry, these terrible experience we often get at airports? And he was like, it's regulations, we need to work around these, and they make the whole thing super complicated. I really think governments need to adapt. We're going to see people start their own countries in the next 5 to 10 years, and I think governments are going to have more competition, and they're going to start moving and acting more like businesses rather than bureaucrats. What do you think about that?
Yeah, look, I don't really have an opinion on that because I don't really. It's like the thought of, let's put it this way, the thought of starting my own country, that would be an absolute disaster. Like I half the time barely remember to make my own lunch, So
Yeah,
running a country would be a terrible, terrible idea
very
for me.
complicated.
Yeah, but I do see that people will come up with clever ways. And for me, the thing I'm seeing at the moment is the mass exodus from New Zealand and Canada as well,
Right.
where a lot of high net worth individuals and a lot of entrepreneurs and things are leaving the country. And we actually saw it here. We had a report. So the government had a theory that, the highest income earners in New Zealand don't pay tax because, that's the rhetoric you hear around the world is, if you've got money, you're evil, and therefore you don't pay tax and all this. And to be clear, there are a lot of people that do that. But they did an investigation in New Zealand and discovered, oh no, it turns out they do pay their tax. So what do we do now? We can't go back and say, hey, these people aren't evil. So what they decided to do was to look at it from a different lens. So even though we're paying, 40% tax or 39% tax, I think we pay here, plus our business tax, all these kind of things as well, and we're paying a huge amount there. They said, yeah, but despite all of that, you've got wealth. So let's have a look at the accumulative wealth there. Let's have a look at your savings, your shares. Let's have a look at your properties. Even though all of those are covered by capital gains tax, they're going to ignore that. They're going to lump all the value that you've got, the ongoing value of those things together. And now, based on that, how much tax do you pay?
Oh.
And it went down to 8.9%. And so the rhetoric from our government was, hey, and I don't want to get too political here, but the whole rhetoric was, these people that have huge amount of money are paying less than half the tax that you are, which is not accurate at all. Where 8.9% of $2 million is a lot more than 20% of $50,000.
Right.
So you can't really compare these things. So it just ends up in a very awkward position. And for me personally, I've run multiple businesses here, and every time, no matter which accounting firm I go with, they always give me the advice, hey, go and locate your business in Singapore where the tax are real low, because we've got a way we can do
Hong
that very
Kong.
easily. And I resist that every single time. And I say, no, I want to stimulate our own economy. I'm loyal to New Zealand. I want to be here. I want my money to go back in the economy here. And the problem is that's getting harder and harder and harder. So it's still to the point now where I'm going, well, where in the world is more founder friendly? Where in the world actually looks after entrepreneurs and tries to help them to grow? And Australia is actually one of those. So that's why we made the decision.
Yeah, it's always interesting when I talk to founders, they don't want to get too political because most people, they get angry when they talk about politics.
Yeah.
It's like playing
And
on
to be
emotions,
clear,
but
I'm not a political person in the sense that a lot of it I don't care. I mean, most of our governments are all centrist governments over here anyway, the center left and center right, and they're all as bad as each other. Most politicians are 2-year-olds pretending to be adults.
Yep.
So from that perspective, I don't care. But what I do care about is the economy, and I do care about helping
Right.
people. And I care about like going down to the supermarket and I'm standing there in the bread aisle and there's no bread on our shelves in the
Yeah.
supermarket, right? We were for a couple of weeks there, we had no bread because of lack of supply and all this.
No way.
And for me, that was okay. I don't really have much bread, but I turn around, there's a woman standing there with her two kids in her arms. And she just looked at me with this broken look on her face and just said, "What am I supposed to do?"
Yeah.
And that's the bit that hurt me. I was like, oh man, this poor woman, and then I realized the decisions that are being made are affecting so many different people. And that's
Right.
the part
Right.
I have a problem with. So yeah.
Yeah, I think as founders, most of us are more open-minded and we can have better
Yep.
conversation without getting emotional. So that's one. Two, I do think it gives us headache to talk about governments and bureaucracies because it's so mismanaged. But three,
Yep.
to fix all of that, we need to talk about it and we need to start fixing it, not becoming like these political persons, aka all front end, zero back end. All marketing and zero product, right? Like I am
Yeah.
this and that, but in the end, you don't deliver. I do think we need to bring this business mindset to politics to change it, and I do think that's quite important, especially if you're going to be part of that community. But coming back to my concept of starting your own country, the why behind that is that you have control from the start. And if you think you can do things better, and if you need to restart most concepts, you wouldn't reinvent the wheel, but still, you'd start with your own philosophies, have a more of a meritocracy, maybe not go taxing people, but charge them monthly like you would in a business. Have everyone contribute and to their own fair share, sharing the same values, having the same mission and vision. Well, maybe you can build something bigger and better. If you have AI and data to track pretty much everything and to have clear metrics, yes, it is ambitious, but to me, after I'm done with BCI and AGI and longevity, I do think this is going to be another of my moonshots. And I do think I'm going to take the risk,
Well,
to have my own community.
one thing you said there, which made me kind of hesitate, is when you said sharing the same values. And this is one of the challenges I see in the world at the moment is we have, we're all human beings. Every single one of us have different values.
Right.
And there are common values. There are values that we can all agree on. And we look at this in the AI world. We say, what can we protect people from AI? Well, all of us could agree that we don't want AI going around teaching people how to make bombs or meth or anything like that. So we can all agree, put safeguards in place around that. But however, every single one of us have different religious or world or political beliefs, and that's okay. So for me, I don't actually want an environment where everybody has the exact same values. I want everybody to contribute to the values. I want everybody to add their own unique flavor and their own unique way of contributing to a society. But the problem we have in the world at the moment is, thanks to media, thanks to social media, thanks to all sorts of different things and divisive politicians, we end up in a place where people cannot have those differing opinions and still have a civil conversation. And you end up with division and you end up with hatred and you end up with bigotry and you end up with hurt. And it all ends in pain and nobody benefits from this except for maybe a few politicians.
And media.
So that's why for me,
a lot.
Yeah, exactly. But for me, the thought of creating my own country, that's a hell of a lot of pressure to try and create a diversive environment that actually helps people. And knowing that people are people and knowing that that's going to come with their own prejudice and their own bigotry and things like that as well. So that's why that doesn't appeal to me too much.
Yeah, the tricky thing there is that even if we talk about values, let's say honesty, for example, there's like variants of that. There's specific scenarios. And I think most of our brains are not ready to memorize all of these scenarios. And we cannot have like this contract saying like, look, you will agree that you will be honest. With like all the sub clauses, it would be too much to handle for a brain. I do believe in diversity, but let's say that most people, well, all the people in my country would have this criteria, and that is somewhat unique to me. And it's the same with the communities I'm building. So I'll start online as well. That is my first model, but it would be that they are somewhat entrepreneurial. That is like a requirement. I wouldn't want someone that is not that's kind of a robot following orders, employee type of mindset. So that, and even that, there's a lot to say about it. But indeed, it's like this complex rocket science type of project. And yes, I do believe in diversity, of course. Like if you're this tyrant and you get like good feedback all the time, oh, good job, Charles, you're beautiful, and a la North Korea, if you want.
Yeah.
yeah, you're not getting anywhere, right? I was reading an article about them yesterday. Most people don't even know what internet is. Imagine in 2023, you
Yeah.
know. But we're here to talk about books, which is a somewhat of a segue and media.
I was going to say the
Um,
problem with you and I talking, it automatically goes to societal things and goes to, you know, the world as we know it, etc.
yeah,
Yeah.
where the serotonin is. But
Yeah.
books are full of serotonin as well, because you've written slash authored a couple of them. It's also a strong
Yeah.
area of interest of mine, so much so that I do want to start my GPT authoring agency in the next couple of months, and I do want to have that one run by a specific CEO, which is another
Yeah.
topic we could talk about. But tell us so far about the books you authored, the
Sure.
why. We can start with that, and then I'd like to discuss about the how and if GPT is possible.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've actually authored around, I think I've done about 7 books. 2 of those I've unpublished because I'm actually going to republish them. I've added new stuff to them, etc. And I also have about 10 other books that are going to be published this year as well, including children's books, which is a area I've kind of
Nice.
branched into because I just absolutely love it.
Yeah.
But my first book came from a few things actually. It came from the fact that in my role at the time, so I'd just come off the back of selling my largest startup. I then had joined the team at Cigna Insurance and was chief marketing officer there. And I got the results. Like, we doubled the revenue of a Fortune 100 company. We're showing really positive results there. So all of a sudden I had demands from all over the world of people going, hey, your method that you brought into the company, the stuff that you're using, we want to know that. Yeah, we want you to teach us. Can we get an hour of your time every week to teach our team? Now, the problem with that is when you've got over 40 people asking you for an hour a week, you've suddenly got a full-time job just teaching other people. So I thought,
Right.
hey, I can streamline all this. I can write a book about my methodology, and then they can buy it from me and I'll make some money. Oh, no brainer. So I did that. And at the same time, the other motivation around that was the fact that somebody told me I can't do it. Somebody said, you'll never make an author's a-hole. And I went, right, challenge accepted. And by the way, every single one of my books has been a bestseller. They have yet to have a bestseller. So I won that
Right.
round. No,
Right.
I'm very competitive sometimes, Charles.
Well, that's
And then the other
definitely
motivation was really around the fact that somebody said to me, a good friend of mine had published a book and was telling me about the doors that it opens for you. And he explained that actually being a published author is one of the most effective ways of building your thought leadership. That
right.
people actually take what you say more seriously when you're a published author. And I thought he was exaggerating all this. I can tell you now, after publishing even my first book, he was under exaggerating it. Like, honestly, the doors that it opens for you is phenomenal. So I wrote a book called Chasing the Insights. It was all around my experimentation methodology, and really was to help marketers and entrepreneurs to know how to bring experimentation into their business and get those kind of iterative, incremental results. From there, I've written a number of other books. I've written books around mental health and well-being, including 5-word affirmations, which is really about my journey with affirmations. I used to ridicule people that said, oh, Vince, you need to do affirmations. I'm not going to stand in front of the mirror and tell myself I'm awesome. Such a waste of time. Until somebody challenged me to try it. And when I did, I studied the neuroscience behind it. I took it very seriously, ran it as an experiment. It was going to be a 30-day experiment. That's been going for over 3 years now. And I still do them daily. It is really powerful. And then recently, a lot of the books I've written have been around AI. I do a lot of work in AI, a lot of work for OpenAI, for a number of different open source projects like Vicuna and Wizard and others. And I wrote a book called ChatGPT for Marketers, which was really around teaching entrepreneurs and people in marketing how to use these kind of tools to accelerate their business and grow their business. And from that started a whole kind of thing where a person reached out to me that heard me talk about the bias of these machines, and now her and I co-wrote a book together called ChatGPT for Female Entrepreneurs, and we have many more books coming up this year. But that being said, I find it very easy to write books because I actually own a publishing company, and I help a lot of other entrepreneurs to publish their books, but also to give them that advantage that I had, even with my first book. The fact that those doors will open to you. It's easy to get booked in conferences, summits, podcasts. Plus, it's the most effective lead magnet I think I've ever seen for any business. Like, you're putting a free book out there for people. You will be surprised how many people will take that up. So much more than a checklist or a mini course or anything like that.
I'm so convinced. You brought back like the life in me. It's just the how that is sometimes complicated. I don't really want to
Yeah.
sit down and write it and take some of my time for that, although that is somewhat of a requirement, as if I'm understanding. Can I GPT my way through it?
Yes and no. Look, there's many ways that you can write a book, and I'll go into a bit of detail in a second. But for the ChatGPT one, I use ChatGPT all the time. I'm a tester for ChatGPT, but I use this tool constantly. But I don't really use it to write my books, just because it's not me. And when you're writing a book, one of the most powerful aspects of your book is when you bring to life a story in there, or you bring to life an experience that you or one of your clients had, that really illustrates and drives home the point you're trying to teach. Well, ChatGPT can't do that because it doesn't have those experiences. It doesn't have your life or anything like that. But what I do use it for is I use it to ideate. If I'm writing a book, in fact, I'm writing a book at the moment on thought leadership, and what that is, and then the perceived pillars of thought leadership. So I have my understanding of that. I've got 13 pillars that I've created that I teach people. So I went into ChatGPT, fed it all that information, and said, hey, what else should I be considering? Like, what else could I be adding to this book that would make this really rich for people and help them understand it? And it came back and made some suggestions. Some of those it was like, no. And some of those it was like, actually, I probably could use that. But I also use it to deal with creative block. And you and I were talking about this before, but whenever I'm writing and I can't articulate something, like if you think about writer's block or creative block, it's generally that your brain gets stuck on something. It can't move past this thing because you're trying to think, how do I word this? How can I explain this in a way people understand? And your brain gets stuck. So actually don't get stuck. Take whatever's in your brain, throw it into ChatGPT and say, rewrite this for me. Rewrite this in a way that's easier to understand. And when it comes back, 99% of the time you look at it and go, oh my goodness, that's exactly how I was trying to say it. So then you reword it into your own wording again, and then you just keep writing your book. So I use it as a tool in my writing process. You can also use it for grammar checking and spelling, etc., etc. But I don't use it to write that as at all. Now, the other thing I would say, though, is everybody seems to think that writing a book is overwhelming and it's a huge amount of work. And this is why I teach about the pillars of thought leadership. And this is why becoming a published author is number one of those. Because for most people, it's so overwhelming. So when they see Charles coming out with a book, they go, oh, wait, well, he must have something important to say if he's put all that effort into writing a book, because obviously that's a huge task. But what people don't realize is there's many different ways that you can create a book. Right, there is your memoir, your autobiography, all those kind of things. We don't generally deal with those personally at our publishing company. We have a couple of people that are doing that, but in general, we deal with what we call genius books. So these are the books that help you to articulate an element of what you do. And for someone like yourself, Charles, what I would do is I would look at all the things that you're teaching all your clients, all the things that you're doing, and then look at the common thread. There'll be something in there that is something that you teach every single person you come across, or every single person in there, and you get them breakthrough from that one little thing. That one thing is going to be your book. Because if you create a book, if you write a book on that one thing, you can give that out to people that will get them a breakthrough, will get them results, but also is a small portion of what you offer. So once you do that, it becomes this incredible lead magnet where they're like, well, if I got that breakthrough from that tiny little aspect of what Charles teaches, imagine if I was working with him all the time. So that's how we kind of approach that. But also that is writing your book. And I'll give you a little sneak peek as to what we teach a lot of our authors, our writers, because when they come to us, they think, well, how do I structure the book? I don't know how to do this. ChatGPT can help you with that, by the way. Just ask it how to structure it. But the other thing we do is I get every single one of my writers to sit down before they even start writing and go, at the end of this book, right? I've got the theme, I've got the topic. At the end of this book, when someone's read it, what do I want that person to have thought, to have felt, and now to do? So think, feel, do. If you articulate those three things, the structure of the book will flow backwards from that. Because when you're going, this is what I want them to think, those become parts of your chapters. So if you want them, if I was writing a book on, if I was writing a book on writing a book, one of the things I'd want them to think is that it's easier than they realize to actually write a book. So that will become part of the chapter, is showcasing how easy it is to write a book. Another part will be, if I want them to feel empowered, then the tone of the book will shift to make sure that I'm always encouraging them to actually take those steps and do that. And if part of what I want them to do is to reach out and book some time with me so we can talk about their book, then that'll be a call to action that comes through a number of times in the book. So that makes it a lot easier for you to write. But the other thing is, often entrepreneurs already have a book that's written. They just don't know it yet. Because every entrepreneur produces content and content and content and content, because we have to for social media, for our courses, for our trainings, for our coachings, all these kind of things. That content in itself can be mostly basically it can be the bulk of your book. So if you're teaching people how to, I don't know, how to create a podcast, and you've got all this documentation around that, use that documentation and put together a book on it. And people freak out and think, oh, but if they read that book, they won't want to hire me. No, the opposite happens. When you empower them and they read that book and they go, hey, I know now what to do, there'll be a small percentage of them that'll go ahead and do that because they're the ones that were never going to hire you anyway. That was always going to try and figure it out themselves. But the rest of the people, they're going to look at that and go, oh my goodness, this person helped me so much. You know what? I can't be bothered doing all this. I'm just going to hire them to do it for me. So that's kind of one of the ways you can write it. And then there's medium content books. There's collaboration books where you only write a chapter, but you become an author, or medium content where, like my 5-word affirmation book is a medium content book. Basically, the writing in there where I talk about my journey of affirmations, I break down some of the neuroscience of it, is around 35 pages. That's not a full book, but it's 35 pages of writing. The rest of that book, every page is a 5-word affirmation. So that's a 250-page book that took me a week to write. So there's many different ways that you can produce a book that's going to add value to people that is also going to be a really powerful lead magnet for you.
Can't I just ask GPT to scrape all my tweets and my LinkedIn and make a book out of this?
You could. That's a bit of a challenging one because it will take that in a literal sense and it'll go, okay, I'm going to put that together. Really, one of the things you're looking for with a book is what I call a thematic thread. So it's actually going, okay, all of those tweets will be fine. You can put them together in a book, but really you want like a narrative throughput that goes through your book. That actually goes, here's why you're reading this book. Here's what you're going to get at the end of this book. So all of the content within there needs to add value to all of that. And the way I get people to structure it, like when I said before about the think, feel, do, if you got to structure your book that way, and then you go, all right, these are the different chapters now, breaking down those chapters is really easy. If one of the chapters about writing a book is, basically, what would it be? Okay, it'll be the writing process itself. So one of the chapters will be the writing process. I would then write down all the bullet points of everything I need to cover off in that chapter. And then from that, I would look at all those bullet points and go, what are my personal stories or client stories that I can add to that chapter? They're going to reinforce the majority of those points. And that's how you bring it to life. So that's the way to write a book that's going to add value to people and that they're going to, they're going to get value from.
Yeah, because one of my favorite book is Naval's Almanac. There's also Nassim Taleb's Bed of Progress, which is just like posts that they wrote. And I write in this style, so thought I'd maybe do it this way with like a new ChatGPT PDF plugin that there is. I just upload the PDF and I ask it to rewrite, but I'm not too sure. Like, I want to talk about the platforms also to which you publish those. So obviously Kindle. What do you think about? Well, first, how long is the process to publish on Kindle? Is it headache inducing and long?
It's not really, in all honesty. I mean, there's and we should talk about the different types of publishing, because there's self-publishing where you can do that yourself. You can go to Amazon KDP, you can upload your own book, you can put your draft manuscript in there, you put your cover in there, get your own ISBN and put that in there as well, and all those kind of things. All right, and choose your categories. So then you can publish that book on there. It's free of charge. You don't have to pay anything for that, and you are now a published author. The challenge with that is that's not necessarily the right way, and there's heaps of mistakes that you can make. In fact, a lot of mistakes. If you put them in the wrong categories, you're never going to hit their bestseller. If you make mistakes with your manuscript and the formatting, then it's not going to look good. The cover design is very easy to stuff up, by the way, when you're putting it up there. So there's a lot of different mistakes that you can make. Then you have on the other side of the spectrum, you have traditional publishing, which is, Simon Schuster, Wiley, all these kind of ones where they do everything for you except for the marketing, right? Which is why it's very hard to get signed with these kind of people, because they don't do any marketing. So they want to know, hey, if Charles is coming to us and we're going to accept his book, he better have 100,000 followers on every social platform. We need to know that people are going to buy his book, right? But also the other challenge with them as an entrepreneur is you don't own your IP. So you can't just take your book and give it away as a lead magnet or give it away at conferences, because they've got a vested interest because they profit from all of the book sales. So in the middle is that hybrid kind of area. So Amazon is pretty easy to put things up there. It's very easy as well to make a mistake. And the other thing to note is if you're on Amazon, that will be on Amazon's online marketplace. They have expanded distribution, but it's very, very limited. It's only a certain amount of expanded distributors. and you won't end up in bookshops. You won't end up on things like Barnes & Noble. You won't end up on bookshop.org or any of those kind of things, Booktopia. Your book will just stay basically on Amazon. There are other networks out there very similar to Amazon. There's Ingram Spark, which a lot of us publishers use. In fact, personally, I use a combination of Amazon and Ingram. And what else do I use? Amazon, Ingram, Draft to Digital, and Kobo Writing Life. I use the 4 of them to be able to get the maximum amount of reach for any of our authors. And with Ingram, that will actually get you the best opportunity to be in bookstores. Store doesn't guarantee it. You've got to actually go to the bookstores and convince them that they should buy your book. And then there's always risks that if your books don't sell there, they get a refund from you. So you just got to be careful of things like that. But if you're working with a publisher that knows what they're doing, they'll make that process really, really easy for you. And they'll give you the maximum reach possible.
Right. I read my books on Scribd. How do they work? How can I get published on Scribd.com?
I'm not too sure of Scribd. It is in
It's like unlimited reading, unlimited audiobooks, but I think it's like a contract in which they give you a small percentage of their subscriber
Is this the Amazon
base.
one or because
yeah,
there's Amazon Unlimited or Amazon Select, and there is, I actually highly recommend authors don't use that personally.
Okay.
And the reason for that is, well, 2 reasons. Number one, if you use Amazon Unlimited or Amazon Select, then the challenge you've got is you have to be exclusive with Amazon. You cannot put your ebook anywhere else. It has to be with Amazon only. The other downside of that is that you basically get paid for how many pages a person has read of your book. Which means if they're a slow reader, you're getting a very slow payout of these kind of things. There is a brand new one I highly do recommend to everyone, and that's Kobo Writing Life, where they've created the same kind of program. They have the same kind of, almost the same size audience. The advantage of it, though, is it's non-exclusive. You can put that on any other platform as well, and you get paid for them downloading your book, not for how many pages they have read. So it's much more powerful than Amazon Unlimited and things. I'm not really too familiar with Scribd or Scribed, just because it's not a platform that we currently use. I don't know too many authors that use that. I think it was mostly around magazines and things like that.
Right. Talking about Scribd, there was this book publishing agency called Scribe in Austin, Texas that closed down a couple of days ago. Their model was 4K per month times 6, for example. So it was 24K paid one shot, no royalties. I think they had cash flow issues with their payroll was quite hefty. So somewhat easy error to avoid. But like what do you think about them closing? What do you think about their model, and how is yours different?
I was going to say they may be closed down in Austin. They're not closed down around the world. They're still in Melbourne and London and places like that. Look, they're what's called a hybrid publisher. So very similar to us. We're a hybrid publisher as well. And other names for that is boutique publishers, indie, etc. And really the way that they work is similar to what you just described. It is essentially that they help you craft your book. They do all the heavy lifting for you. So doing all the publishing stuff, the cover design, the formatting, the proofreading, the editing, all these kind of things. You pay a fee to them, but they don't own the IP. Now, there are some hybrid publishers that'll try and convince you, hey, pay $3,000 up front, but then we'll take a percentage of the sales of that book. Steer clear of that every single time. And the reason for that is because then you've got another vested interest in this. You can't give away that book for free. Otherwise, suddenly they have a problem with that because they should be earning money off it. So just think about those kind of things in the contract. Now, within those other hybrid publishers, though, there are good publishers, there are bad publishers. And the bad are very few. There are those that are relatively new or don't really know what they're doing, and they can help you publish a book. There are those like us that have been doing this for many, many years that can produce really good quality. But then there is Scribe, and I'm going to call them out. I don't normally call out companies, but I call Scribe the MailChimp of the publishing world. And what I mean by that is, with someone like Scribe, you pay your fee, and they tell you, and it's a reasonable fee as well. You pay your fee with them, and they're helping you to get your book published. But then you go, oh yeah, and I want this aspect as well. Well, that's going to cost you more. And that's going to cost you more. Oh, you want to be on Ingram as well. That's going to cost you even more. Oh, you want your book format in the hardcover now. Well, that's going to cost you more and more and more and more and more. And it's just add-ons on add-ons on add-ons. And before you know it, you're actually paying a huge amount of money for very little return. So just do your homework on that. Honestly, I do. It's very rarely that I'll call out a publisher and say steer clear of them, but Scribe are one of those. So do steer clear of Scribe. But for other publishers there, just ask them what their books they've published before are. Have a look at those books, do a bit of analysis, look at the cover design, see, do I like that? Do I like the reviews they're getting? Do I like the way that they've kind of promoted this, etc.?
I mean, they published frigging Goggins' book, which is like a phenomenal book.
Yeah.
And I'm flabbergasted. I'm not understanding how you could publish one of I think Goggins' book is like number one for God knows how long in the nonfiction category. How with that reputation could you go under? Is it mismanagement? Is it the model? Is it the pricing model? Because
it's what we call the lowest common denominator. So yes, they've produced the Goggins, they've done like Barbara Barron, they've got Sophie Ansell, they've got huge name authors on their platform. But there's two aspects to that company you've got to realize. There is the ones where they actually do the real work for people like Goggins and that, where they work alongside them and things, and they pay a lot of attention to that. And then they've got where they make all their money, which is an average mum and dad or your average young entrepreneur and things, and then producing their books. And the problem with that is there's no quality control. So you end up with basically hitting the lowest common denominator, which means their prices are going to come down and down and down and down. Good publishers know that actually that word of mouth is the most important thing, and seeing the results are the most important thing. So if you produce the results, you're getting good responses from your authors and things like that, and they're loving the work that you're doing, then you're going to sign new clients.
Right. Okay, last but not least, with everything you just mentioned, do you think this is a cool business to start? If let's say that I would start my book publishing GPT infused business and have these beautiful books written quick for people and charge them for that. The model behind it would be that, I think that book can be good for you. And it's like this kind of business card. It's also like an opportunity for me to learn and offer something that people need. It's not necessarily for the financial part of things. I don't think it can scale to the sky. What's your thesis on that?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. I'm of two minds of this, to be honest, Charles. So I'm always keen for people to try and disrupt the marketplace and to try something new. And I do believe that's pretty easy to make money out there. So creating a company like that, you could have some success and you can make some money, and that's fine. But there's another part of me as well that looks at the aspect of having a book as something particularly powerful. And when I'm working with clients, I want them to feel very proud of the book. I want them to know that it's their book. That's why we don't do ghostwriting. So we have a ghostwriter that we bring in for certain projects, but in general, if I'm signing a new author, we don't want to ghostwrite that for them. We want them to write it. We want to empower them to write it. And we want it to be that at the end of that, when they're holding that book in their hands, they cannot get that grin off their face. So when they're talking about at conferences and things, they're really proud of that book. If you've got somebody else writing a book for you or ChatGPT writing a book for you, you're going to feel that little tension inside when you're up on a stage going, here's my book, kind of, or here's a book that I wrote, sort of, that kind of thing. So that's the little challenge I have inside of me is I really do think it's incredibly powerful for entrepreneurs to have their own book. So if it's written by ChatGPT or by a ghostwriter, that makes it a little bit different.
Right. I think the concept though of just like micro writing on a daily basis and not like being all the time stuck to behind your screen for 9 hours a day can be quite cool. It's like micro value, and then you back it up in one beautiful book. Thank you so much, Vince, for the value you've added today. As usual, like great convos. Good luck with the traveling and the packing.
Thank you.
Like have your ultra patient mindset on. You'll get it. You'll get there, and life will be better. Where can people find out more about you?
Oh, look, I make it really simple. Go to chasingtheinsights.com. That's the home of my podcast. It's the home of my books. You'll see everywhere you can connect with me. You'll see links to my publishing company there as well. But it's also where you can book some time with me. If you've got ideas around a book or ideas around something and you're not sure if it's going to work, or you're not sure if this is something you should write, or you're feeling overwhelmed at the thought of writing it, book some time with me. It's obligation free. Obviously, I'm completely utterly biased because I think every entrepreneur should be an author, but it's obligation free. I'll give you some advice around that. And at the end, look, if there's a way we can work together, that's even better still.